Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Desha. I hope you're all doing all right through this. I know some of us are doing all right. Some of us are having a little bit of a hard time. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody depending on where we're all at. But I wanted to just let you know that we're not alone. None of us are alone. And reach out and call somebody or talk to someone if you need. There's different things that different people are doing that I know of. There's been some online things. There's of course telephone calls. Some of us have to work full-time or part-time. Some of us have kids to take care of. Some of us have projects that we're finishing up or what have you. There's so many different things, and some aren't sure what to do. But I want to reassure you that God is with us no matter what. No matter what we're doing right now, no matter what we're going through, God is with us. He wants to bless us right where we're at. He's walking with us through this. It might feel long. Some of us might feel anxious or depressed. I know there's been a lot of people relapsing from sobriety back into use of drugs or alcohol through this period because it is a tough time. And sometimes, what do they say? The idle time, it can be the devil's workshop. And, some of us have a lot of idle time, and that's unfortunately what some people turn to. And we all have our different things, and we all have different ways of handling different things, but finding positive and healthy ways to cope with our given situations will make life a lot easier for us, if not now, in the long run. So I just wanted to talk about really quickly about being sober-minded, and that's actually a term. Well, let me talk about what sober means first. When we hear sober, we think of drugs and alcohol usually. We think of lack of those things, abstinence from drugs and alcohol, not drunk. And it actually goes a little bit deeper than that when we really look at what the word means. It can actually, when you take it a little bit further, as it's mentioned in the Bible, it can mean rational or sensible. There's also while most people would look at the word sober meaning not drunk, it means actually in the Bible something more spiritual in nature. It means, and when it's translated from the Greek word, it actually means to be calm and collected, to have a good sense, good judgment, wisdom, and level-headed in times of stress. So that's really what being sober-minded means. It means dwelling in God's presence. It means turning our minds away from the things that make us stumble and turning toward Him instead. It means thinking deeply about our faith and who we are. It means thinking about who we are as people of God. It means thinking of our faith, turning toward Him instead of turning toward everything else going on in the world, but to remember that He's in control and we're going to be okay. Think about how Jesus walked over the earth. He kind of walked quietly over everything in a sense. And He helped where He could. He did what He could with where He was at. He came to those who were hurting, just like He might be with us right now. And He is, especially if we allow Him to. He's waiting for us. So He'll come to us when we're hurting, and He'll walk with us. And He wants to put His arms around us. And if we allow Him to, and we actually think about our faith and our relationship with Him, He's right there with us. And that power is greater than anything going on in this world. When we start to get sucked into all these things going on in the world, we get sucked into social media and what this person's doing or that person's saying, what they're doing or not doing. It really, instead of focusing, it starts to turn our minds into an unhealthy place. And that can lead to so many different unhealthy behaviors. And when we keep our minds focused on where we're going in the end, really, that all this is temporary, even after the virus is over, this whole situation and things go in a different direction where we're able to do different things again, even that is temporary. We know where we're going. This is just temporary. We're just walking through. But when we think about being sober-minded and what a sober person is, it's much more than just the drink or the drug. It's an internal, what do you want to call it? An internal thing. I don't even know what word to use. It's an internal way of life, and it's having a relationship with God. And keeping as much contact and as much thought toward him as we possibly can. Not to be like others who are asleep, and this is one of the verses, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober, be alert and of sober mind, because the devil prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour it. The negativity and all the other things going on in this world, that's just waiting there for us. When I was drinking and using drugs, it was, I would hear terms like when I would try to stop so many times, it's out in the parking lot doing push-ups. It's just waiting out there it basically wants to kill you. It wanted to kill me. Drugs and alcohol are nothing to play with. And when I think about that, when we put it in terms of faith, it's like that devil, that the demon, everything is out there waiting for us to turn away from God, because that's exactly what it wants to do. It wants to kill us physically, and it wants to kill us spiritually, internally and externally. And like I said earlier, the Greek word that means sober means to be calm and collected. Now, I know we all have our issues with that at times, because none of us are perfect, but we don't have to stay there. We can bring ourselves back. We can turn our minds to where it needs to be, toward that power greater than ourselves, toward our Creator, and get back to that good judgment and get back to that wisdom and the level-headedness. How often do we lose our minds, so to speak? Maybe when we're standing in the grocery store, or that person cuts us off on the road, or they're not doing what we think they should be doing, and then we have something to say about that. That can really lead us into different and negative thinking and unhealthy behaviors, because our thoughts translate into our behaviors, and our thoughts translate into our words, and those words can be very damaging. Life and death are in the tongue. We can either elevate and encourage someone, or we could knock them down. They might be having a bad day, and that one bad word might just push them over the edge. And we've heard story after story of that happening. You just look around, and people who have taken their own lives, people who have just ended up in a mental institute, what have you. It's just sometimes it takes that one last thing to push someone over the edge. So just think about how Christ walked the earth, how he stopped to help people, he stopped to minister, he stopped to sit with them, and just be with them, because he loves you. He loves us enough, and he wants to comfort us, and he wants us to have his peace, because we're guaranteed trials and troubles in the world, but we have his peace. He guarantees we're going to have challenges, but he left us his peace no matter what. Nothing can separate us from God's love, even though sometimes it feels like it at times. He's still with us through this all, and he wants to bless us and meet us right where we're at, and bless us in the way that we're able to be blessed right at this very moment. I think about how he prays for himself, in John, let's see here, John 17 I'm open to. He prays for himself, and then he prays for his disciples, his followers, and then he prays for all believers. So that's the order in which he prays, and it's beautiful what he says. My prayer is for them. My prayer is not for them to be alone. And he's talking about us. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. We're in God and God's in us. Isn't it so beautiful to think that that same power that raised Jesus from the dead is in us? And we have all these things available to us, but it's okay to not be okay at times. It's okay to falter, and it's okay to backslide a little bit, but we can't stay there, especially mentally, it's that can really push us in a different direction that's not going to benefit us, benefit those around us, and benefit God. I really hope that we can work together in this, and not let it divide, but let it unite us, because we do have this common thing in play right now, and that would be this sickness that's going around. There's things we can't control. There are things that are out of our control, but we can control our attitude at any given time. God's given us a spirit of love, not a spirit of fear. So when we're being fearful, and when we grasp onto that fear, we're actually grasping onto things that are not of God. And then that can take over our lives. It can snowball out of control. It can make us feel helpless and hopeless. And, granted, we are human and that's going to happen at times. But when we don't let our circumstances completely take over and control us, and we can feel and allow God's peace to come into our lives, that's where we're going to be able to get through these things. It's Philippians. I love this verse. It's Philippians 4. Let me get... because this is Paul speaking, and it's so powerful, especially with what we're going through. And sometimes this is easier said than done, and I'm not denying that. But Paul talks about how fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about Christ. Wow, that's a thought. Think about people who have influenced you and how they would handle certain different situations, who have influenced you positively. What would Jesus do? What would this person do that made a really profound and positive impact in my life? What teachings did they share with me that I can maybe use and also pass along to other people? But fix your thoughts on what's right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about the things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, which is ultimately from God. Everything you heard from me and saw me doing, kind of using others as an example, and Christ as an example. So when we do that, the next verse, and this is the second part of verse 9, then the God of peace will be with you, and we'll be able to feel that peace that he leaves us. And then he goes on at some point here. No, wait, I'm going to go back a little bit. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing, and I know how to live with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, whether we're outside or inside maybe. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Even so, you have done well to share with me in my present difficulty. These were people that were sharing in Paul's difficulty at the time. They were helping him and lifting him up. And in turn, Paul was reminding them of what they can have through Christ. And it's just such a beautiful and a reassuring thing. And I'm not saying, like I said, it's different for everybody. There's people that are trapped in their house with 2, 3, 4 children. There's people who can't get out and get what they need. And there's just so many different circumstances that are going to each affect us differently. But when we get through this, I believe that things are going to be different. I don't think we're going to go back to what we had, which most of us probably believe that anyway. But hopefully this will bring on a newness and a renewness in our lives and how we see the world and how we handle different things. And the things that we sometimes take for granted, maybe we won't so much anymore. I don't know. I don't know how it'll speak to you, but I just know that if we allow this to happen, we're going to be different people and in a better way than we ever were before. I just hope that this message finds you well. I also want to just remind you, I want to give you one thing to part with. It's John. It's in John. I have my computer here because I don't know all the verses. I remember some of them, pieces of them, so I want to make sure I get this right for you guys. But I love what Jesus had said in John 14. All right, here we go. I am in my Father, and my Father is in me. Let's see here. If you love me, show it by doing what I've told you. This is Jesus speaking here. Because a loveless world, says Jesus, is a sightless world. If anyone loves me, he will carefully keep my word, and my Father will love him and will move right into the neighborhood. Not loving me means not keeping my words, and the message you are hearing isn't mine. It's the message, he's reassuring us that it's the message of the Father, of God, who sent me. It's John 33, I thought. Oh, I don't know where it is. But anyway, he's telling us that he gives us his peace. Here we go. There it is. And it's John 14:27. I am leaving you with the gift, a peace of mind and heart, and the peace I give is a gift that the world cannot give. So do not be troubled or do not be afraid. So if we're in Christ and Christ is in us, there's no reason for us to fear, because that's not from God. So be sober-minded as we go along in life. Remember that God is with us and nothing or no one can be against us. Jesus wants to bless you where we're at. Christ wants to walk with you and talk with you. And some of you know the song. But he walks with me and he talks with me and he tells me I am his own. But he wants us to just abide in him and to love him and walk with him. And he wants us to allow him to love us. He's got the whole world in his hands. Some of us know and remember that song, he's got the whole world. So we can rest assured that God is with us and no one's against us. And hopefully as we're walking through this, hopefully those of you in recovery will continue on that path and share your experiences with others. Hopefully we can appreciate another day sober. We can appreciate all the gifts that we've been given, and whether it has to do with sobriety or with your life in general, any changes you made over the years. Just remember that we might not always be where we want to be, but thank God we're not where we used to be. Just appreciate the gifts, appreciate the calmness that you're able to have with where you're at, appreciate the clear head and the visions that maybe Christ has given you and that you've gotten through God. Appreciate the fact that you have people who love you, that you have a roof over your head. Think about those things that are pure and right and admirable and all those things that sometimes we take for granted. And it's not always easy, and it's going to be different for us all. I know this time is really difficult for some, and others it's very welcomed. So what's right for one isn't right for another, but we all have this virus situation in common, so hopefully we can let it unite us and not divide us. So on that note, go in peace, go in love, go be sober-minded, and enjoy the rest of your night.